All set.
Good, thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 2:04. In present, we have myself, Lorraine, Karen, Gloria, who is currently an associate member, but will very shortly be a true member, a
Yay.
voting member. And hopefully Anna will join us.
Mhm.
So first on the agenda, approval of the March 28th Disability Commission meeting minutes. Did everyone get an opportunity to read them?
Yes.
I
Okay.
didn't, in my email from Josh, I have the agenda, but I didn't see the minutes from the last meeting, so I'll abstain.
This was from March, Karen. We couldn't have a meeting last month because there was only me and Lorraine.
Oh, okay.
Got on, so you might have seen it, but didn't realize it because it was like 2 months ago now.
I got it, all right.
Well,
So,
what happened, David, is I panicked because I thought, oh my God, where's April's minutes, or whatever. And then it dawned on me, we didn't have a meeting in April. So,
right,
yeah.
so do I have a motion to approve?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you,
I'll
Gloria.
second it. Yeah.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Mhm.
The March 28th meeting minutes are approved. Thank you. Second on the agenda, the empty commission spot. As you all know, we just mentioned, Gloria has graciously decided to fill the spot. So after June 12th, when the town council approves her, we will have a full disability commission membership. And I think it's really important, though, that we look still for 2 associate members.
Yes.
Not only will it help broaden our base, but it will be good if we ever have the need for another member. That will be important. So we'll continue to look for 2 associate members.
And that member that we reached out to during that triad meeting over at Housing, he sounds very interested, and I think he'd be pretty good too.
Right, he's the gentleman that called and said he couldn't attend today. So we'll certainly give him another opportunity. I'll keep him on the list when I send out the agenda, so he has another opportunity next month.
That's great.
David, were you able to talk to Rich Gopin? I know I had mentioned his name previously, primarily because he, before he retired, was an occupational therapist and has a long history of working with people with disabilities.
Oh,
You know what? That totally slipped my mind, and it's too bad because I talked to him. He and I are both in Literacy Place, and we
mhm.
do teaching English as a second language, and he's a member there. And I just saw him a week or 2 ago. So no, I'll reach out to him. And
I
see
mean,
if
I know he's a
he-
busy guy and he might be too busy, but I think he would be an asset to this commission, just given his professional experience.
Right.
Right.
No, I think that's a good point, and I will reach out to him. And right now we're looking for we are looking for an associate member, and that might suit him right now. So let me reach out, and thank you for reminding me, because I was going to do it and it totally slipped my mind.
We could actually have both. I mean, Mark is also disabled and in a wheelchair. So
Right,
he brings a valuable experience too, so we could have both,
absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And actually, that would be important for us because he would have a different perspective, of what we're looking for in Bridgewater. So I think that would be great. And
Yes.
we'll reach out to him again.
Mhm.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, Zoom meetings will continue to be held by all Bridgewater Town Commissions until further notice.
Mhm.
I don't know when they're going to eliminate this, but right now we will be continuing to do our meetings through Zoom. They mentioned a couple different, they mentioned quite a few reasons, but a couple of the major reasons were accessibility for members and for residents that would like to attend the meetings. So they will continue to do that.
Mhm.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, for the best of everyone's ability, it's really important if you're able to attend the meetings. Like I had mentioned, last month, we didn't have a quorum, which a quorum in our group is 3 voting members. So it was just Lorraine and I last month, so we were not able to have a meeting. So if you can, please attend so that we keep the continuity going. Okay, without.
I did email you that I could not attend, but I apologize if my email didn't work out.
No, you did, and I appreciate that, and thank you. No, that was no problem whatsoever. And you know what, Karen, everyone's got something that comes out, so that is not an issue at all.
And David, as I had mentioned to you prior, I will be in Tampa in June, so I'm not gonna be able to attend the June meeting. So I hope
Right.
that doesn't affect, the availability of the meeting too.
And I'll, let me,
Yeah.
as we get closer, let me see, because right now we would have myself
Mhm.
and Karen and maybe Anna. But, we don't know, maybe Gloria will be a full voting member
Yeah.
by then also, which would help.
Mhm.
So we just need 3 members to have a quorum.
Right.
And this summer I'm teaching on Tuesdays, so I'm pretty much available because I can't go anywhere. I've got to be on campus in Florida.
Well, that works out perfect.
That's good. That's good.
Karen, do you normally teach summers?
I do, just not normally on Tuesdays. So
Oh,
that's my
okay.
schedule this year.
Great.
So next on the agenda, Bridgewater Community and Economic Director, Bob Ruley is our guest speaker. Mr. Ruley will discuss in a presentation the duties involved as Community and Economic Director. And at the end, time will be allotted for questions from DC members and guests. I did put down a couple of questions that Karen and Lorraine had sent in advance, so they are listed in the agenda. But certainly, if you have any more questions at the end, please feel free to ask also. And Bob, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna see if I can figure technology out here and
It's always fun.
share my screen. Can you see it? You can see it. Good.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can.
Well, we might have to do it the old-fashioned way. Thank you. My name is Bob Ruley. As David said, I am the Director of the Office of Community and Economic Development. I joined the town on January 9th of this year. Previously, I had a similar position in Warren, Rhode Island. Prior to that, I had a career both in the public sector as well as the private sector. Public sector in Arlington, Virginia, as well as Tioga County in New York. So for today's meeting, some things to talk about, introduction, which I just did, tell you a little bit about what my office does. And then I want to share with you a revitalization strategy that we've been working with the town council on. And you'll be hearing more about it, but I think particularly as it relates to accessibility and pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, we've got some exciting things in the works. So my office is responsible for planning. Shane O'Brien is the town planner. He works in my office. We also staff the Zoning Board of Appeals. I do that. I also staff the Conservation Commission, and then we're also responsible for stormwater management. I primarily, with Nicole Salvo in my office, focus on the community and economic development issues. So the town in May of last year adopted their comprehensive master plan, which kind of is the framework and map for how the town wants to move forward. But as you see, I mean, making sure that pedestrian improvements and handicap accessibility and making parking safe are all priorities that were identified by the town and by its residents. And what you're going to see, what follows is our attempt to make sure that all the things that we're talking about are consistent with what the master plan had. So there's been a lot of great planning studies that have been done in the last decade plus. As I said, the comprehensive master plan was adopted last year. The community development master plan in 2014, complete streets has been completed. And our housing production plan was done in 2017. The university strategic plan was completed in 2018. They are working on their 5-year update now. We are identified as an MBTA community, and that action plan was submitted and we're named that community in 2021. Our action plan was submitted in January and approved of this year. So with respect to downtown revitalization, and this is primarily areas that we're going to talk about and focus on our central square, as well as the campus plaza and everything in between. So as part of that, our outreach and engagement includes meeting with business owners, stakeholders, and residents. We're looking at establishing a storefront facade improvement program, working more with advocacy organizations downtown, improving the pedestrian corridors and connections, making streetscape improvements, place-making projects, attracting new businesses to town, how we market downtown, and then transportation infrastructure improvements. So as part of that, we are looking for different partners and resources through the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, where we've been able to obtain some funding that will help with some of the procedural zoning ordinance amendments. Main Street America is a program nationally that works with small towns in terms of making their downtowns vibrant. Some of the things that we're also focusing on is the relocation of the MBTA platform from its current location back to somewhere in the Spring Street lot. As I mentioned, we're adopting new zoning bylaws, which will include something called form-based code, which I think when I get to that part, you'll be interested in, because that will allow us to deal with accessibility. And then continuing to have a collaboration and partnership with BSU, which I can say has been strengthened quite a bit since the time I've been here, as recently as this morning when we had a meeting with some faculty and representatives of the president's office as part of our core revitalization team meeting. So with respect to Central Square, and again, this is right from the comprehensive master plan. These were some of the priorities that were identified. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but traffic and pedestrian improvements was one of the big things. Parking was a priority, and then parking management. So I am in agreement that pedestrian safety in the Central Square area is paramount and quite a athletic event to try to get around Central Square. across
Exactly.
different
Yeah.
streets.
It's true.
For
Yeah.
the uninitiated, I should footnote this, that this is a return to Bridgewater for me, because I first came here as a freshman in September of 1977. I'll let you all do that math. So it has changed quite a bit since the time that I was here. But what I do remember when I was here is that there was a much more vibrant physical connection between the campus and downtown in the Central Square area. In our conversations with representatives of the university now, there's at least the perception that it's not pedestrian safe for students to come. And then also, I mean, we've lost a lot of businesses that were here previously. So there's not maybe perhaps as many needs for kids to come off campus. So one of the first things that we're looking at is that how we can improve how traffic flows around Central Square. As you know, now we have angle parking and 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, and no shortage of crosswalks, which people tend to ignore. So it is definitely an obstacle course trying to get around in Central Square area. So one of our proposals is that basically, and this is just a conceptual plan at this point. I will say that Old Colony Planning Commission is in the final stages of a Route 18 corridor study that's looked at Route 18 in intersections from the East Bridgewater line to the Rotary in Middleborough. They're definitely looking at intersections and accident rates and rating them. Not surprisingly, almost every intersection along 18 in Bridgewater gets a letter F. And
Wow.
so one of the things that we're looking at is what if we could reduce the lanes to one on each side? That would allow us to push out sidewalks so we could have sidewalk dining. It would create a bicycle path and just create some more noticeable and functional areas to cross. As you all know, we have a lot of heavy truck traffic that comes through. We're not necessarily worried that if the trucks had to slow down, that wouldn't be a bad thing. And if they felt like they were slowed enough, they might find another way to get around town.
Yeah.
We're not concerned that their alternative is going to be through neighborhoods because the way our streets are configured, they would never be able to make the turning radius. So, part of what we do in my profession is that we know people don't see things in the abstract, so we try to give visualizations. Again, I just want to say that these are conceptual drawings to stimulate conversation and to give people an idea of what could be. So this is how we would envision, this is the building next to the old town hall. So this is just a perspective of what it would look like if we were able to widen the sidewalks, hopefully attract a restaurant or two to be on Central Square that could have outside dining. But also, as you see to the left, it shows that we would go from angle parking to parallel parking, have a dedicated bike path, and then reduce the travel to one lane of traffic, which would meet all of the requirements in terms of what State Department of Transportation and federal highway guidelines are for the width.
Bob, it looks great. I just had a quick question. If you were to do parallel parking like that, would you lose a lot of parking spots in downtown?
You would on Central Square, but not in downtown, and I'll show you why in a minute.
Okay,
So another big part of revitalization of Central Square are the renovations that are going to happen at the old town hall. They are putting on a new roof on it as we speak. I've put in a congressionally directed earmark through Senator Markey and Senator Warren and Congressman Keating's office. All in all, at the end of the day, based on my experience, that's probably going to be somewhere between a $9 and an $11 million project. But we think its reuse as an arts and cultural center in partnership with the university would do a lot to attract people to downtown. Once the fire station is relocated, that building would come down and we'd be able to add an elevator to the rear of this building, so it would be handicap accessible. So moving on to parking, and I hear this in almost every community that I've ever worked, is that we have a parking problem, and my answer to that always is we have a parking management problem. So this was taken June 6th last year, middle of the day. And you can see that there are oodles of parking areas around the downtown area. Now, part of the problem is some of them are privately owned, some are churches, some are municipal. We just need to come up with a better parking strategy so we can have shared parking. We want people, I think the mentality now is that people think that they want to just, if they're going to Restoration Coffee as an example, they almost want to park inside Restoration Coffee.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what we want to try to do is get people to walk around, park their car in one location and spend time walking around. Bridgewater is a very walkable community. We look at it as being 3 legs on a stool. So, the idea that somebody would walk from Central Square to Campus Plaza now is forbidden. No one would, because it doesn't feel safe and it doesn't look safe. The reality is it's less than a 5-minute walk. So
Right.
we have to look at how do we fill in some of those blanks. Similarly, to walk from Campus Plaza back to campus is a 5-minute walk. And it's less than a 5-minute walk from the campus back to Central Square, but there doesn't feel as if there's any connection. So we have to improve upon that. And we need to look to see how we can reduce the number of curb cuts because that will help with pedestrian safety. And we just have to do a better job too of directing to people where parking is. One idea that we're considering is once the fire station is removed, is partnering with the university to build a structured parking garage behind the old town hall. We already have the municipal lot behind that, so those would be brought together, and then we could either have retail or professional offices on the ground floor of that new building. So another thing that the master plan called for is just having some design standards and architectural standards, and we are in agreement for that. So in my past lives, I was able to introduce something called form-based code. Form-based code is an expedited approval process that a developer or property owner can come in, get a copy of the form-based code, and basically it spells out in there all of the requirements that the town is looking for certain types of development, whether that be how the building fronts the street, type of materials. It could be ADA accessibility, it could be incorporating renewable energy, any number of things that would be addressed through the typical planning and zoning process. If a developer is able to come in and check all those boxes, then they get through the development process much faster because it's only going to be reviewed by the planning board. Doesn't have to go to the planning board, the zoning board, back to planning, then to the town council. So the advantage is that the community gets what they're looking for, and the developer saves a lot of time and money and effort going through the approval process. So that's one of the parts of the zoning that we're looking at right now. In terms of overall downtown redevelopment, I mean, we see, the good news is we don't have a lot of development sites. The bad news is we don't have a lot of development sites. So where we do see opportunities are the old Perkins Foundry site, which there's a proposal in front of the planning board in the early stages of review. Campus Plaza. On Hale Street, there are two properties. One is the electronic recycling, and the other one is on the corner of Plymouth and Hale Street, which is a vacant site right now owned by the university. And then on Broad Street in that area between Central Square and Campus Plaza, there's the old Friendly's bowling alley, and then two undeveloped lots that we think that there's opportunity to redevelop. So transit-oriented development is one of the focal points of what our revitalization effort looks like. And that is consistent. Again, it's in the comprehensive master plan as something else. I took the liberty to rename it transit-oriented development, but that's where you concentrate, because we're an MBTA community, we're under an obligation to do this by December of 2024, excuse me, where you concentrate new development that has within a half a mile walking distance to public transportation. So whether that be train or bus, we think that, again, where the current MBTA platform is not convenient for anybody, and the ridership shows that. We think that if we can relocate that back to somewhere in the Central Square, the Spring Street lot, with some of the other development in the areas I just showed, then that would lend itself to redevelopment that would be close. And we also don't think that all of that transportation is going to be rail. We've been in conversations with Brockton Area Transit. We think that, particularly students from the university and residents might benefit from improved bus service as well. So again, these are just some of the goals and objectives that you have with transit-oriented development. And let me just say this to put some context to this. We're in the early stages of, we're not planning anymore. We're at the implementation stage, but this is a process. So all of these things will take time. I think the most encouraging part of this is that last week, the town council adopted a resolution supporting the vision that we've been putting forward. We had a workshop with the council in April, on April 11th of this past year, where we laid out many of the things we're showing you here. And we'll continue to work on community engagement and public engagement as we go forward. Our goal is to have a community workshop on what the vision is for revitalization sometime in late September, but between now and then, you're going to start to see a lot more information coming out with respect to this whole process. Don't need to read that to you. So let's go back to some of the sites that we talked about that are underutilized.
Yeah.
So this is the first one I'm going to show you is the Friendlies, the bowling alley, and the two empty lots. There was an approved plan for that has now timed out, so that approval is no longer there. All we're trying to do with these sites is show people the potential of what it could look like
Wow.
if they followed our form-based code and our zoning amendments, with the idea that, we're creating both opportunities for local businesses or small businesses or small professional offices with residential on the upper floors. We did receive a complete streets grant a number of years ago. For some reason, the town let that expire, the funding expired, but I was able to get it refunded recently. So that calls for pedestrian improvements along Main Street and or Broad Street. I think initially we're going to make those improvements on Main Street because we know and anticipate we're going to have some redevelopment on Broad Street and don't want to have to undo something that was just done.
Bob, are we starting back from scratch? And the pictures you just showed us of the housing and the shops, it seemed like it was almost a done deal a couple of years ago. And just like you said, it kind of went away. Would we have to start looking for someone to decide to build all that again? Or how would that work?
I agree that, and I think I said this early on, you've done plenty of studies. I think I was brought
Yeah.
on because
Yeah.
I don't believe in paralysis by analysis. I'm a doer. So to answer your question, David, I mean, as I said, there is a proposed project for apartments and professional space and retail space at the Foundry site. Not necessarily, we're not against development there, but we just don't like how it's been proposed, and we're encouraging the developer to pay more attention to what the town's vision is. I'll get to Campus Plaza in a moment. We're in conversations with that property owner. With respect to the Friendly site, I mean, I have had conversations with that property owner and have encouraged him to have his architect get in touch with me so we can come up with something that is agreeable to everyone. The site owned by the university, they're interested in finding a developer that would want to do something there. And with respect to the other site on Hills, I mean, we like that site only because it's, in our opinion, underutilized and would be close to a relocated train platform. I think one thing we all can agree on in town, so we have a lot of single family homes and we have a lot of university housing, but we don't have very much housing for, say, people 55 and older that want to downsize, that don't need to be in any kind of assisted living facility, but don't want to be in a large single family home. Another thing we're focusing on is we don't want to continue to do development where we have open space or agricultural land. So we're looking to be smart and redevelop where we already, but again, what we've identified as underutilized sites. The other advantage is that there's already water and sewer there. So many of you probably know that there are areas in town that don't have water and sewer. So from an environmental standpoint, it's much better that we do construction where we know we have infrastructure available. So let me just go to the next site. This is this is an example is the site on the corner of Plymouth and Hale. Again, just giving a perspective on what type of a building would look like. I mean, we're not looking, we want to make sure we're respecting the scale of the surrounding community. So in this case, this is simply just a 3-story building. And this is the other property on Hale Street where the technical recycling is, which probably has some really funky things in the dirt there based on what it is they do. And again, just a perspective in terms of what it could look like. Perkins Foundry site. Again, this perspective in terms of what it could look like.
Wow.
The proposal now is just one big building with 148 units of housing, and then 2 smaller commercial buildings. We think breaking them up into smaller buildings and maybe orientating them closer to the street will create more of the village feel that we would like to have. the biggest opportunity that we have is Campus Plaza, and I can tell you that Campus Plaza looked like this in 1977.
Yeah.
There's been some lipstick and a
Mhm.
wig put on it, but for the
Yeah.
most part, it hasn't changed. And this is very typical of what we call 1960s planning, where you had one-story buildings with lots of parking. As you can see, there's lots of parking available there today. The property itself is owned by a national real estate investment trust called Federal Realty. Prior to my getting here, they were positioning the property for sale. Given what its current zoning is, there's not much that can be done there, but, given the fact that it has proximity to the Spring Street lot, looking at the size of the parcel, and keeping in mind some of the things that we're trying to do in town in creating mixed income housing that's accessible to people with disabilities, housing that is close proximity to transportation. This site really lends itself to all of that. So again, we're just trying to show a perspective of what you could do. So I guess the best reference point that I can give you with respect to this is if you can imagine a smaller Mashpee Commons where you have a mix of commercial space, professional space, and then housing. You would have green space incorporated in there. So you'd almost have its own little main street through the center of the project. Then you could have different housing types. You could have townhouses, you could have condos, you could have rental housing, and then you would have a mix of retail. Interestingly enough, the demographics in Bridgewater are really strong in terms of median income over $100,000. It's almost $115,000. Yet most of that money goes out of town because people like, there's nothing for me to spend my money on
Yeah.
in Bridgewater.
Mhm.
Many people say, that their favorite restaurant is in Easton.
Mhm.
So one of the things we want to be able to do is keep some of that money here in town. Something else that we hear quite often is that the university has difficulty attracting faculty and staff because they can't afford to live in Bridgewater in a single family home, where the average home price in Bridgewater right now is $540,000. Or they can live in student housing, and most people don't want to do that. So we think there's a market for what I call mixed income housing. And again, there's a requirement through the MBTA communities that we create a certain number of housing units by the end of next year. So last thing I'll show you, again, these are just examples of, the type and scale of developments that we're talking about. Obviously, if you're along Broad Street, that's going to have a different look, but if you have a bigger site like the Foundry site in Campus Plaza, it allows you a little bit more flexibility to do some things. And last but not least is thank you. And I'm happy to have as much discussion as you would like to have with respect to what we have going on.
Great. Bob, thank you. That was a really good presentation. I certainly appreciate it. Karen, I have some questions from you on the agenda. Did you want to start asking questions first?
No, go for it.
Oh, no, I'm asking, did you want to do it, or did you want me to read your questions?
Oh, could you please read them? I don't have them in front of me.
Oh, sure. So Karen would like to ask if Bridgewater's economic plan includes encouraging businesses that are not just physically accessible, but also disability friendly. Could people with vision or hearing impairments function successfully in their interactions with those businesses? For example, ordering food, requesting services, etc.
Yeah, well, certainly we can encourage them, and those are, things with that nature can be included in the guidelines in the form-based code. In terms of making a business do something, we can't do that. I mean, but we would hope that, businesses are savvy enough to understand that making themselves accessible to any particular possible patron, they would want to do that. When it comes to, physical improvements, any money that the town gets with respect to either state funding or federal funding for public improvements, the minimum standard is it has to be ADA compliant. But, I certainly appreciate what you're saying with respect to visually impaired. All we can do is encourage businesses to do that. I think that modern technology and modern buildings. It's already incorporated in there, whether that's in, directories of who's in the building, that it will give them a voice announcement if they happen to be sight impaired. But certainly, I mean, we want to encourage people to do that and hope that they would.
Yeah, because I think it would make sense, not just because we're seeing an increasing number of low vision and truly blind students on campus, but if you're thinking about a mixed use kind of residential facility that where you would encourage seniors, by definition, we have less perfect vision, less perfect hearing,
Sure.
and creating places where folks would actually want to leave their apartment. You know, when I started here at Bridgewater, half the people that I started with live in Providence. There's nothing to do in Bridgewater.
Yep. Yeah, I get that a lot. I just got here.
When I asked my students, what's a good restaurant that I should try? They said, go to Boston.
Yeah,
And again, I think that, I know that COVID kind of changed the dynamics for a lot of people, and the university, kind of threw a net around the campus and wanted to keep kids on campus when they were there. As I said, Bridgewater is a very walkable community. So, but we have to give students a place to walk too. But
sure.
at the same time, I know that there's an increased number of international students on the university that don't necessarily have the ability to go home every weekend. I mean, I think Bridgewater's always had the reputation of being a commuter school, but I think that we lack some of the ethnic diversity right now that some of those students might appreciate, but it's available in Brockton. And, and if we had the weekend bus service, that might, avail opportunities for the students to go to Brockton and people from Brockton to come to Bridgewater. So I think that intermodal transportation is what we look at transit-oriented development to be. And I'll say that Brockton Area Transit is very much at the table with us with respect to looking at that and how we can improve those things. So long answer to your short question.
No, it's good.
Lorraine, did you have a couple questions you wanted to ask?
Well, I wanted to first make a couple comments. First of all, Bob, you're a breath of fresh air. And I don't say that lightly. I retired in 2019 and I was with the town, the Elder Affairs Director, since 1996. So it'd been a while. And obviously I was part of many master plan groups and this group and that group. And, we met with different agencies and businesses, and there was a great, some of the plans that were out there and the visions and what the downtown could look like. I live in town also, so I see it day by day when I go through Central Square. And as you had mentioned, maybe reducing it to one lane of traffic, which would be wonderful, because with the 2 lanes, you try to slow down and somebody on the left is trying to go past you or whatever while someone's trying to cross, and you can't see them due to the parallel well, not parallel parking, but that diagonal or whatever type of parking that is. So that becomes, an issue. And also being involved with, I was on the Housing Authority for a while too, and being involved with those clients and residents. So there's been a lot of great talk about you, Bob. We have a lot of high hopes, and I think you have a great vision. But what I wanted to ask is, so what is currently being prioritized in regards to the safety and needs of our disabled population? I was wondering what would your priority be regarding that?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, like what's my priority? And my answer is I have many.
Yeah, I bet, I'm sure.
So, I mean, I think, again, taking advantage of the funding that we got from Complete Streets. I mean, it's not as much as as we need, but, on Main Street, I think we can address a couple of those crosswalks this year.
Yeah.
And that's what our plan is. I mean, I've already reached back out to the engineers that designed the improvements a number of years ago. We're probably going to go out to bid. I would expect, I've got someone joining my staff on the beginning of July that has some landscape architectural experience as well as architectural experience. So my goal is to task her to take the lead on the Complete Streets implementation. And then we'll continue to look at other funding sources. But I think the other short term is, pushing forward the idea that we can make some of these streetscape improvements in Central Square. There's federal highway money that we can go after, but just socializing it and, getting people comfortable with the idea. I think there's always a notion that, well, geez, if you reduce it to one lane, it's going to be a traffic nightmare. It already is a traffic
It
nightmare.
already is.
And,
Yeah.
Studies will show
Yeah.
that when you slow traffic down, it actually flows better because people aren't hitting their brakes. It's predictable. It's syncing up the lights properly. I don't care if we lose all that heavy truck traffic. It's not doing anything for us right now.
Exactly.
The businesses that those trucks are going to do not contribute anything meaningful to the local economy, in my opinion. So I think, short term, just talking about how we make that area more pedestrian safe is important. It's also important too, because I think, again, if the university has the perception it's not safe for their students to walk downtown, which I don't necessarily agree with, because they're young adults. I mean, young adults go to school in lots of different places, including urban areas. So, but
Right.
if the perception is it's not safe, then we need to overcome that. And, quite honestly, some of the development that's happened, I wouldn't have necessarily approved it the way that it is, because there are way too many curb cuts, and curb cuts just interrupt the pedestrian flow. So, we're gonna have to work with those property owners. I mean, even, on the concept of shared parking, Walgreens, that's a big lot that's probably at best maybe 50% utilized. The idea that, well, students are gonna park there, there's no difference in parking at Spring Street and parking there. I mean, I think that people want to throw up barriers for a good idea, but, part of what we're going to have to do is just, kind of talk through that. And, I think I don't have all the answers. I mean, I think a lot of what we want to hear is from the community. What do they like? What don't they like? And
Yes.
it's important that, again, that this is how it's going to look. It's just that we have the opportunity to kind of reimagine, for us to go to a developer like Federal Realty and say, hey, look, there's more that you could do here than you can now, we call that increasing the density. That creates value. So just by doing the exercise we're doing right now, we've probably increased that property value by several $1 million. In exchange for that, we will be looking for that developer to make contributions to the public infrastructure. So I first started doing this in this way in Arlington, Virginia in 2000. If anybody's familiar with Arlington, it's on the Metro corridor, but at every metro station, there are public improvements that were paid for by developers that did development around there. So we'll be looking to do things of that nature too. So the whole idea is we're going to get something bigger and better without penalizing current taxpayers or raising new taxes. And I think that's, a real difference in terms of how we're approaching this than other communities. I mean, quite honestly, I think when you see what we roll out in June, I don't believe there's a community anywhere else in the United States that is doing as comprehensive look at revitalization and reallocation of infrastructure than what we're looking to do. And I am not going to be the one that said we just did another study and didn't do anything.
I know, there's just so many studies out there. Like I said, I can attest to that. The other issue is I've been talking, every time we have these studies, what about a Target? We need retail is the issue. Myself and probably a million others, we go out, we have to go elsewhere to go shopping.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think that,
Grab
you know,
that, we have one supermarket. That's what we just keep hoping that there's gonna be something else coming in,
probably I don't want to complaint, criticism that I got from those that don't appreciate what we're trying to do is, we don't need any more housing. Well, yes, you do. I mean, if you want to get the type of businesses that you're going out of town to get, those smaller special retailers, better restaurants, you need the housing to support it. And you have the demographics to support it. We just don't have the product.
Right. Yeah.
Target, Walmart's, they have better census data than the US Census Bureau does. That's not what we want. I mean, you want more of a Trader Joe's. You want,
Right.
and again, I
Yes.
think if you look at, the type of mix that you have in a Mashpee Commons, local businesses getting supported by local residents. I'm proud of what I accomplished when I was in Warren. I started there in 2017, and Warren was known as a place that people drove through. When I left in 2023, it was a place that people drove to. We
Oh,
used a
that's-
lot
yeah.
of different creative
That's great.
federal and state funding to
Yeah.
improve building facades, to incentivize businesses. And again, I mean, people criticize me. So you made it so busy now, we have parking problems. Well, they're not problems, they're just management problems. So
Yeah.
a lot of what we have to do, I have to do is be patient and educate people and hear them out. There's a lot of experts in the community that maybe not as expert as they think, but I mean, their voices deserve to be heard.
Right.
But
yeah.
the development community has certain realities too. And what we're seeing now is, I always refer to, you had the campus plazas from the 60s. Prior to that, you had what we're trying to recreate, that small time feel where you had local businesses, people lived upstairs. We went from the campus plazas, then we went to malls, and all a mall was Main Street with a roof on it. I mean, people put wishing wells in and windmills, and they try to make it feel homey, and people would run laps around a mall, and they would walk a mile to get into the mall. And then when malls went away, we went to big box stores like the Targets, the Lowe's, the Home Depot. And on the retail side, you're seeing those big box stores shrink. So I think we're coming full circle, and COVID gave people a lot of bad habits, shopping online. But I think playing off of one of the things we did in Warren is that we said that we had businesses that you couldn't get online. So we had a homemade pasta shop open.
Yeah.
We had an olive oil store open. We actually had an independent bookstore open where
Okay.
she's open 4 days a week, and 3 days a week she's on, doing online sales. So, coming up with those hybrids. But, I go back to small town businesses. It's like Cheers, right? Everybody, you want everyone to know your name, and you know their name. And, that's kind of the environment that we're trying to create. But I absolutely agree with you that, when somebody tells me that they have to go to Easton to find a good restaurant, and with no disrespect to the 99, that's not necessarily the attraction that we want.
Right.
So we have
exactly what they did in Storrs, Connecticut. UConn did not have a campus town. And so
Right.
the university and the town partnered, and there's now a village with
Yep.
businesses and apartments. Has the university been very forthcoming about their plans for big trucks coming through town? Because they're about to start that $42 million renovation on East Campus. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
next summer.
that's more manageable because we're able to regulate the time that, trucks can be accessing sites. And then that's not going to be an ongoing thing. The disruption that we have now is that we've got the auto recycling. I mean, I don't know how many trucks a day are coming through with smashed cars and then leaving with car parts. And then we have the quarry. So as I said, I'm not knocking either of those as a business model. It's just not, that business model doesn't trump our need for pedestrian safety and our need to fix downtown, because doing nothing is not an option. I mean, it's not sustainable. No one's feeling the need to reinvest in their properties right now. So by changing the zoning, I'll give you an example. The building next to the old town hall, it's been for sale, but our current zoning doesn't allow much more to happen there than what's happening now, which is not much. So by looking at, the parking requirements, looking at, could you have residential in part of that building? And really, I think that's a building that wants to have a first floor restaurant that would be very visible. We've got another property on the opposite side of Central Square that has had vacant restaurant space, I think, I'm told, since they actually built the building. So, we need to encourage property owners to figure out a way to get that occupied. One of our strategies is Nicole from my office is working with a small business consultant. Last week, they started what they call their business stroll. They're actually going out to small businesses at their location, letting them know what the town's vision is, but also listening, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what are their frustrations. And I think it's really important that we have improved lines of communication, not that communication has been bad, but one of the exciting things for me in coming back here was I did a lot of work with different universities when I was in Rhode Island, and I said, "Oh, how great is this? You know, I'm coming to a town that has a university now."
Yeah,
And I got here and it's like, well, we don't do a lot. But I can say in, the almost 6 months that I've been here, I mean, we've had incredible dialogue with President Clark personally in his office. We're working with faculty on a number of different projects that they're helping us with the revitalization. I want to do more. I think that, particularly for the Masters of Public Administration program, what we're doing in Bridgewater is an education that they couldn't get anywhere else in terms of, whether it's
Exactly.
economics, financial planning. I mean, there's so many pieces to it. And I'd like to see that expand because we're a university in a town, and a university, and I want them to feel like one. When I worked in upstate New York, I spent a lot of time in Ithaca, where you had both Cornell and Ithaca College, and that just had a real sense of a college town. I mean,
Mm,
here I think parents come through, and if they're not even stopping the car to let their kid out. I mean, they're just kind of pushing them and then going back. We need to keep some of that. I use the expression all the time, we need to create a there. And I think we have the ability to do that. But it's going to take everyone rowing in the same direction. And all of that, I mean, and I think, to what your purpose is as a committee, I want to make sure we're vigilant that, we're not excluding that segment of the population
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
Contributes either in the past, present, or future. That, we are perceived to be inclusive in the broadest possible way possible.
Gloria, did you have any questions you'd like to ask today? I don't want to put you in the spot, but give you an
No,
opportunity.
I just have an observation. So much good information coming forth, but I'm glad that Mr. Rulli is aware that, in all of this, we all want these improvements,
Yeah.
but glad that he's going out for other funding, because the taxpayers in town really pay their share. And with all
Yeah.
these projects coming
Mhm.
forward, it's kind of like, and with all these debt exclusions that we're already working off. So it's really important that that outside funding be, in the forefront. And also too, I have an observation. It's a Mashpee Commons type thing. I love the development. I love the area, but I find it to be not that safe for walking, because parking is all segmented, and I find in the rights and the left. So I'm thinking,
Yeah.
when that vision of Mashpee is there, perhaps it could be more spread out and not, I don't want to use the word congested, but there are too many little avenues, I think, in that whole development that I find the parking difficult, and I find some of the walking difficult. So that's just a personal
Yeah,
observation.
and that's fair. And I thank you for saying that. I mean, I think, Mashpee Commons started as a campus plaza, but I think it's been segmented over time that, it was like
Mhm.
Legos, they kept adding on. And, we're now
Mhm.
looking at, okay, let's look at it before anything gets built, that we protect the pedestrian safety and that the traffic flow is safe. So that's an advantage that we have. With respect to the funding, and I totally appreciate that. I'm very fond of telling people that, when I was in Warren, smallest town, in the smallest county, in the smallest state.
Mhm.
Our budget, not including school, was only about $13 million a year. Last fiscal year that I was there, I brought in over $7 million of either federal or state money.
Yeah.
So the added bonus that Bridgewater got is that I'm a pretty good grant writer. So, as I said, I've got a $2 million request in through the Senate. I think since I've been here, we've brought in over $500,000. My whole initiative, what we're working on right now, and my ability to bring in outside professionals to assist, is all being done with money that I've gotten from the state. So it's not costing the taxpayers anything. And I think, by changing zoning and creating that density and giving developers that added incentive, what we're asking back is, if we need, investments in improving the wastewater treatment system or water, that they're going to pay for that. And again, so we're trading something that we already have in control over and not putting that burden on existing taxpayers. And maybe in some instances, potentially, don't quote me, in a position to lower taxes,
That would be
but
amazing.
certainly not
Be
looking to
amazing.
increase them.
Right,
Bob,
thank you.
I had a couple quick questions. One thing that's near and dear to my heart. I think in Bridgewater, we probably have somewhere near 20% of our citizens are 65 or older. And a lot of people are getting priced out of their homes. We have very little senior housing in Bridgewater. Bridgewater Housing, I think, has about 150 units. And Lorraine, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it about 150 units?
I think, I'm not sure exactly, but
And
yeah.
And I know two people that have been on waiting lists for Bridgewater Housing for well over 2 years. Have we considered seriously in the near future more senior housing to help some of our seniors that really can't afford to stay in their homes anymore and, they need somewhere to go?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got two answers to that. One is, I mean, property owner and a potential developer came in today that they're looking at doing a 55 and older complex. Now, those will be condos and probably not real affordable given today's market, but I like to use the term mixed income housing. I spent a lot of time dealing with affordable housing in my career, and affordable housing means a lot of different things to different people, and most of it is very not educated. So affordable housing means that you're considered eligible for affordable housing if you make less than 80% of area median income. So 80% of 114 probably to most people doesn't seem affordable. And many of the programs that are out there to promote affordable housing don't look at those people that are at 20, 30, or 40% of area median income. So those are young families. They could be families with one adult and children. It could be seniors that are, aging in place. So I think it's important that when we talk about housing, we're talking about, and that's why I like to use the term mixed income, because I think it's less offensive than affordable and
Right,
it's more
yeah.
palatable for people to understand. But we absolutely need to create that because, again, a senior leaving a single family house, well, that creates another opportunity for us to bring a family in that would want to live in town. I mean, we've seen, COVID brought a lot more people to town. Again, some of the objections we get to housing as well, it's going to be too many kids in the school. It costs the same to educate 15 kids in the classroom as it does 20 kids in the classroom. I mean, you still have to put the lights on, you still have to pay the teachers, still have to pay the custodian. So, and again, if that's one of the growing pains, then perhaps, that's something we look for the development community to contribute to offset that cost. I mean, communities have the ability, in Massachusetts, we'd have to get legislation from the Commonwealth, which I don't think is difficult to get, where communities can have what they're called impact fees. So when you have new development coming in, you automatically can get money for schools, you can get money for police and fire. And we're having those conversations with every stakeholder within municipal government, as well as residents and groups like this, as much as we can, because I absolutely agree with you that affordable isn't always affordable, because it's, and some of that are federal guidelines that, that might work in some very urban centers where, the demographics are much different and the income levels are much different, but to just kind of universally lay that out across the whole country doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because we're not helping the people that need to be helped the most. And those projects, I mean, I think the reuse of the school is an unbelievable example of my 40 plus years doing this. That's probably the nicest affordable housing project that I've ever seen. But that's
Galvin School, right?
yes. But that's at, 60% affordable area median income. For some people, that could be almost everybody that works in this building would be eligible to live there. So I think, some people think of affordable housing as Section 8. Section 8 is a whole different thing than affordable housing. I mean, that's a voucher and that allows you to go wherever you want to go where they take vouchers. But I always, and I spent a lot of time talking about it in Rhode Island. I was happy to see that the House just adopted many of the recommendations I had made to a special legislative committee 3 years ago in terms of you address your housing needs through zoning. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do, everything we're doing is by using zoning in a smart way. But I always used to use the example of if you're a first-year police officer, you probably can't afford to live in the community you work. I would ask, older people, we don't want those people. I'm like, those people, if your granddaughter's second grade teacher has 2 children and she's a single mom, she probably qualifies for affordable housing. So is she those people? I mean, we don't know who those people are. They're amongst us. So as I said, a lot of what I do is patiently try to educate people.
Educating, yes.
I think the other issue that Bridgewater is dealing with is an image problem, because obviously you identify when you come into a community, you go around the center, and I mean, everything is just such an eyesore. It's really sad having lived in this town for a while, and everything's just so run down, and put some paint on it or do something.
Well,
But
and that's, I mean, that's one thing that, I did in Warren was, communities got money called ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act funds. So in our downtown area in Warren, I was able to get the town council to allocate $250,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I was able to give grants. They didn't have to repay them up to $25,000 for people to make improvements to the outside of their building.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
that's all it takes. And
really,
we have to incentivize those
Yeah.
property owners to do something better.
Right.
And I think I don't have to, Central Square, you can walk around, exactly what buildings I'm talking about.
Mhm.
When the most prominent thing that one sees trying to cross the intersection of Main and Broad Street is a sign for McDonald's on top of a business that tells you it's a half mile down the road. And that's not good. I mean, and again, that's a building that, with a little TLC, it has some really cool architectural features.
Yes, it does. It does.
Um,
It's beautiful.
You also look at, what, and this is with no disrespect to many of the current tenants in there, but when you look at the tenant mix, that's not attracting what
Right.
we want to attract.
Right.
And so, I mean, again, we have a lot of work to do, but we're doing it. And I'll just share this with you that I wasn't looking for this job. I was very happy doing what I was doing, and in addition to housing, I was recognized nationally for addressing climate change and sea level rise. Was quite happy. My office was 5 minutes from where I live. The fact that it was Bridgewater and I could come back was compelling, but when I first came up and met with Michael and Kimberly, told them 3 things. I said, this might just be us meeting each other and having a nice conversation, and I wish you luck. 3 things you need to know about me. I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everybody. Second thing is I don't want to be micromanaged. And the third thing is I move fast. So if you're comfortable with all of those things, then we can continue this conversation. So you can see how it went. I think in almost 6 months that I've been here, we've accomplished quite a bit, perhaps more than has been done in the previous 6 years. And I've got a really strong team in the building and outside of the building. At least this week, I have support of the town council and the town manager. It's government, it's always subject to change, but we want to keep that positive momentum going.
Yeah.
I want to build on the relationship with the university, but I want to get out and give the community hope that,
Yes.
but we need them to be part of it too. I need them to, if we build it, will you come? And so
Right.
our plan is, we're going to go to Little League games, we're going to go to soccer games, we're going to go where the community is.
Mhm.
I have Nicole and our business consultant going to the senior center, talking to people about what it is we're doing. Those people that have been in town their entire lives that feel change is a bad thing, we
Mhm.
need to flip them on that, because if you don't want your taxes to go up unnecessarily, then you better support what it is we're doing so we can spread that tax burden out and put it on others, not people that are here.
But
Maybe
Bob, I think
someone-
that's the question. That's the, you hit the nail on the head. I think that's it, trying to sell it back to the townspeople, because like I said, I've lived here for a while, and I know all of you have too. And we just don't want to feel it's like, oh, this is another study, this is another
Right.
this, and look at the downtown and nothing's changed. So like I said, you're really our hope and your team, and you're a breath of fresh air, and we're really looking forward for some changes to happen, you
So
know?
we talked about it this morning, so, you know, we're on to, if you tell a friend and they tell a friend and they tell another
Mhm.
friend, I mean, we just, you know, we are doing, and again, I think you just have to look
Yeah.
at where we've come from January 9th to May 30th.
Mhm.
You know, I've done 2 presentations to the town council before the planning board, town council, then a workshop, town council adopting a resolution to support what we're doing. I've got a very strong team of public relations people, marketing people, branding people,
That's great.
bringing the university on board with some of their faculty. I mean, we've got it. Failure is not an option.
Mhm.
And I'm at a point in my career that this will probably be my last professional stop. I
Mhm.
do not want it to be a failure. So I have motivation every day to come in and do this.
Great.
I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. I mean, I still live in Rhode Island, but I feel bad for my staff because on the way in, I drink a lot of coffee and I'm like, okay, it's a machine gun approach and, you know, here's what I'm gonna do today. And I unwind a little bit on the way home as much as you can.
Wow.
You know,
What
Bob,
it's-
I was just thinking, Bob, my wife and I love Plymouth, and I was talking about that at the beginning, and I can remember maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago, downtown Plymouth was dead. You know, people would come down, they go to Water Street, look at the waterfront, and nothing happened on, you know, downtown Plymouth, but they renovated it, they added more restaurants, they do outdoor dining there now. It's a beautiful destination, and it just gets bigger and more popular. On a small scale, you could look at Easton downtown, and they made brick sidewalks. They put a really nice restaurant there. It's not perfect. There's still a couple empty stores, but they all have nice facades now, and it really looks inviting and, you know, old fashioned, and it's really a lovely place on a smaller scale. And we would be somewhere in the middle. But I think the first step, now, as you were talking, I was thinking, I've lived in Bridgewater for 40 years, and really not a lot has changed in downtown Bridgewater. Maybe it's gotten a little seedier. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be around long enough to see some of those
Yeah.
changes, because, you know, I've been here 40 years and really not a lot has happened. So it would be great to see, you know,
Mhm.
5 years from now, some big changes that, you know, would excite people. And I think once you start, it's just going to get better and faster, you know, the change.
I mean, I did a presentation to the planning board, probably 2 or 3 months ago, and when I was done, one of the planning board members said, well, you know, Mr. Rowley, I'm sure you're very good at what you do, but you're in the wrong town. I mean, we don't need any new development, and there's nothing
Oh,
wrong
geez.
with Central Square. So the next day, I happened to be at Restoration Coffee, and another member of the planning board, you know, said to me as I was walking out, he said, are you doing a survey of Central Square? I said, no, I'm getting coffee. And he said, I said, why? Because there's nothing wrong with Central Square. And he proceeded to say, you know, my wife and I have date night every Friday, and we love to go to this restaurant in Easton. I said, uh-huh. I said, are you listening to what you just said to me? That you
Right.
have to
Yeah.
leave? He said, well, it's interesting because I talk to the owner all the time, and he said most of his business comes from Bridgewater. I was like,
Wow.
do I need to
Yeah, see?
continue this conversation?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
100% of my faculty events, so end of the year, big events for all the faculty searches, all of the events were outside of Bridgewater, other than campus interviews, because there were no restaurants, there was no place to gather. And I know from a faculty standpoint, they prefer to use small businesses. So we went up to Crew Brew in Raynham to have our end of the year faculty event. And it's just like, they would be
Wow.
thrilled to have it in town, but
I
there's no
know.
place to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And-
and we're
and
talking
again,
about searches, we're talking about all kinds of things that are
Exactly.
not in Bridgewater.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, those are, you know, those are challenges, but they're also opportunities. The way
Right.
I'm definitely not a
Yes.
glasses half empty kind of person, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
You know, I did a presentation last Wednesday to the board of Metro South Chamber. And, you know, they're like, geez, you know, can you come to Brockton? I said, no, I can't come to Brockton, but it'd be nice if you all came to Bridgewater occasionally, because
Right.
it kind of feels like So in September, we're also going to hold a regional meeting of Metro South out at the golf course.
Oh,
And,
good. Yeah.
Nice.
we'll have
good.
our presentation more refined, our plans more refined, but the development community is responding well because from their standpoint, Bridgewater wasn't considered developer friendly. And my feeling is we're not going to give away, just please come, we'll do whatever you want. We want to do it in a smart way that, we are an historic downtown. I mean,
Yes.
you
Yes.
can't recreate that without it looking recreated.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think we're a lot closer to where I want us to be than away, but I've got a lot of talking to do to get people to, as we say in my office, we are passing out the Kool-Aid and hoping everyone is drinking it. And
Well, I thank you
In
for your
saying that-
presentation and your time and.
Oh, David,
Yes,
real quickly, in saying that, Bob, I think it was during one of the master plan, developments or whatever, and the community was involved. We actually took a walk downtown. That was one of our exercises. And to actually look at the storefronts and just to look at the historical perspective, I mean, it was really amazing because, like you said, people don't want to venture downtown and worry about getting killed and crossing and this and that. So a whole group of us is part of that exercise. We actually walked downtown and, checked out this building and that building and over by where Just Desserts is and that corner and all that, looking at the facade and just the beauty, the historical beauty of, if we really updated some of these.
it doesn't take much.
no,
Yes,
it's
exactly.
too bad, like Bob had mentioned earlier, the assortment of businesses downtown. I love the bakery. That's a great bakery, but then right next to it, you have a piercing salon, then you have a tattoo salon. Then you
Oh.
have one of many nail salons. I mean, it's not a
I have
very.
I have a whole theory on nail salons, by the way, but I won't get into that here. Well, I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
My office is accessible, no pun intended, to all of you in terms of, comments you might have, or
Mhm.
if I can provide you information, if you're aware of different funding grant applications that you think the town should look at, please share that with us. More than happy to continue the dialogue, and your input is very valuable, just like everyone else in town, but particularly your specific interests are appreciated.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and we hope to see you soon. Thanks,
Great.
Bob.
Yeah,
Thank you. baby.
Thank you very much, Bob.
yeah, thank you very much.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
You guys, I'll make the rest of the meeting quick because it's already 3:15. The next thing on the agenda, if anyone's interested in the quarterly tea with the MOD, it's Service Animals in Public Settings. I think there's still spaces left. It's June 7th, 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I'm on vacation that week, but if you're interested, I can resend you the email for that and you could register for it.
David, I did sign up for that, but something else that I have to participate in came up.
Right.
I'm hoping that they will have that, available. They record it. I'm hoping.
They have had it recorded for other meetings. I would
Right.
assume they will.
Because I was very interested in that. So,
Good. Karen addressed that BSU has a 9-page document spelling out the various rights, obligations, and restrictions. Karen questions if Bridgewater has a similar document, it would be appropriate for the town. How the relevant ADA rules are addressed for employees and citizens in public spaces. Not sure where we were going with that. Karen, I have to
The
pick
only
your brain.
thing is, and I don't know if our current ADA person or who would enforce allowing or restricting, and it does get messy because a lot of people will put a service dog vest on a dog when it's an emotional support dog and they are not protected at all.
Right.
But true service dogs, for the deaf, for the blind, those are absolutely protected.
right.
And it does get muddy. And I don't know how a town like Bridgewater but again, there's not a lot of places where folks would go. So this probably won't be a real big issue until after Bob's vision has been completed, because it's just like, well, if they want to go into a restaurant, well, we've got two. They can go for coffee or they can go to the 99.
Right. Right.
Not so sure how many folks are trying to get into the Greyhound with a service animal, but maybe. So we don't have, I don't know how big of a problem it is, but I do know, like in the disability community, some folks are being concerned that they're being turned away, and other folks are complaining that folks are being let in with these ill-behaved animals who aren't true service animals, and they're making it a problem for other folks. So it is in the disability world, kind of a contentious hot topic. So I'm
Well, let me
glad that the Mass Office of Disability is addressing it.
Let me ask you this, could kind of go, I'll skip ahead one. The Bridgewater Building Inspector and ADA Coordinator is Steve Solari, okay? Steve has been a guest at Disability Commission meeting in the past. Would we want to invite Mr. Solari to, I said our June meeting, Lorraine's not gonna be here. I think it should be a future meeting, but should we invite him later in the summer to a meeting and we can kind of pose some of these questions to him and maybe get better answers and maybe see what Steve is working on as ADA coordinator.
Yeah, the last time he was here, he was really focusing on just physical access and not really the full breadth of the ADA rules. And so I don't know if he is the person who would enforce or address those in our town, or if it would come from somewhere else. So getting that clarification would be good. I think having him come at the end of the summer, or maybe in September, would be great. And then follow that up with just, he has a standing invitation. Much like Emily attends the Elder Affairs Commission meetings, and she's religious about attending them. Steve should certainly be made welcome at ours, just like you are the voice of disability in town hall. I don't know from his previous comments if he sees himself that way, but he does hold that position, and Michael Dutton has been unwilling to consider another person for that position. So we either need to hold Mr. Solari or Mr. Dutton accountable for who's enforcing these things.
So moving ahead, I like September because we'll all be here in September. Valeria will be on board. We'll hopefully be fully staffed. I wish that we could move past the Zoom meetings because I did get a text from Anna. She couldn't get on. And, I feel it would be easier for some people if we could actually meet in person.
I'm not sure. I did not understand Mr. Dutton's email saying that it was not possible to hold hybrid meetings, since we've absolutely been doing that in the past. So I don't understand that, but he is the town manager, so we'll do what he says. But
also, when you think
that
about it, the town council meetings are in person also. So how
yeah,
do we differentiate town council or our commissions? I don't know.
seemed that hybrid
under the-
would be technologically possible, and he did cite a technological barrier to doing it. So I did not understand his reasoning for that.
Right, because if you look under the meeting agenda that was sent, Josh sent out, under disclosure, it tells you pursuant to section 20 of chapter 20 of the Acts of 2020, it goes into that. And then it said, this meeting for the town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible. It says, during the state of emergency in the March 31st, 2025. So it sounds like it's going to be Zoom until that time. Or something like that, I guess.
Oh, man.
The state of emergency for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is over.
Right.
It is over.
Might just be Michael Dutton putting a state of emergency in just for our town.
It
But
is.
it's not
Extended
a
certain
statewide
corporate
thing.
measures.
It's over for the whole country right now.
Yeah. Except for
President
Bridgewater,
Biden,
apparently.
actually, it ended in May, so it's over for everyone.
Except in Bridgewater. So here we are.
Except in Bridgewater. A couple other things. This was from a couple months ago, but just to show what one of our members can do. Bridgewater Housing Authority crosswalk accessibility. Lorena spoke with several BHA residents that lived at Heritage Circle. They felt the timing of the crosswalk light did not allow sufficient time to safely get across. Their question was, this issue, something could be adjusted. Lorraine spoke with Highway Superintendent Paul DeCosta. He said he should be able to increase the time so everyone can cross safely. I think Lorraine, you said it was completed within a couple of days of you guys speaking.
I think so. And actually, one of the individuals that had an issue with the crosswalk is Mark, the one that
Okay.
invited.
Which would take him a little while to get across, right?
Yeah, so I will continue to, address it with the housing residents to see where we're at with that, if it does
And I
provide.
just,
But
I
I,
ended
but
up
I
just-
spoke to Phil. I think everybody knows Phil. He's in the wheelchair downtown at Roach
Yeah,
Brothers.
I know
everywhere.
exactly who he is. Yeah.
I just saw him a couple days ago and he said, Lorraine, he goes, they just fly by, no matter what you put up or what you do. They just still don't pay attention. I mean, I'm just wondering, can that crosswalk even be painted or something? Because it's white. Can it be painted like a fluorescent color or, I don't know. There's gotta be something.
They did
more.
paint it, they refreshed the white paint when
Yeah,
they
it's
put the
white.
signs up. And they did put signs up over there. They
Yeah.
put those yellow signs. They got rid of those barrels, which I just thought there was potholes over there.
Oh, it's
And
horrible.
they
I
did put
know.
up a couple of good signs,
Yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, that's everywhere. Like you try to cross downtown and no one slows down. I mean, it's
I
pretty
know.
sad.
It's horrible. It's just horrible. Oh,
But I just want to say kudos to both you and Mr. DeCosta for following up. I mean, it just shows like just a little bit of work like that and you got something accomplished. So thank you.
yeah. I think we're all working together for the, as a team effort on trying to get this, get this done, all of us. So,
Number 9 on my agenda, recruitment of new members to Disability Commission. We already talked about, we're going to be filled to our 5. I was wondering, would it be better if we raised the number of our board to maybe 6 so that we'd have another person? We have a requirement of 3 for a quorum. If we had 6 members that could voting members, then if we had 2 or 3 that unfortunately were out in one particular month, we would still have a quorum. With 5, we tend to never really have more than 4. Yes.
okay, what generally happens on boards and commissions and the reasoning for the odd number is in regards to a vote. You generally
Okay.
don't have an even number.
Okay.
Because, that's an issue when everybody, so it's generally an odd number when you do have a board or a commission or a quorum. It would be 5 or it would be
Right.
7 or whatever.
Okay.
exactly.
But
I didn't realize that,
that's
so
also a
that's a good
charter
point.
issue too, because it's in the charter with the amount of, with the number, on the board. And then I don't even believe, does it state associate members? Whereas the Elder Affairs Commission, we have 9 members, and I think there's 2 associate members. That's how I had set it up when they were doing the charter. They only wanted to give us, I think, 5 members, and I said, are you kidding me? So there's 9 members now, and there's 2 associate members, I believe, the way the
There's
charter
definitely 2
is set up.
associate. We just lost an associate number, Karen, but we do have 9 members. And,
Right, and that's an
with
odd
associate.
number because of voting purposes also.
Right.
So,
Okay. It's already 3:30, so I think that's probably quite a bit of information. We
can
will
I
have,
ask a question real quick, David?
yes, ma'am.
Can I just give a real quick summary of Mr. Rulli's presentation?
Yeah.
Because there was a lot to put down in minutes. So can
Oh,
I just,
yeah.
the highlights or whatever?
No, we're not looking for the
Yeah.
novel version of it. No, don't worry.
There
I
was
think
a
the
lot.
sentence we met with him, he described his plans is
Yeah.
plenty.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make
Well, that
sure
was nice and short.
because
That's
I
good,
tried
Karen.
to jot down what I could, but there's a lot, so I didn't want to,
I truly hope that there is change because I have lived in Bridgewater for 41 years. And there was a couple little restaurants. Remember, there used to be My Sister and I, and
Yes,
there was
Yeah,
one
the
thing
one
down
on
there.
Central Square was awesome.
I
Yeah,
know.
it was. And
Yeah.
it's gone downhill over the years. And, unless you want your nails done, which there's probably a dozen places downtown,
Oh,
there really isn't a lot of choice. But some of the ones that are there, you mentioned that Greyhound Tavern restaurant, a lot, and even Crispy's downtown.
Yeah.
don't look very inviting. Downtown doesn't look inviting, so.
No,
Like
it
I go
doesn't.
right by Greyhound Tavern and actually the outside is kind of cute. You know, they have an outdoor seating area. If you were walking down there, which you never do, you would
No,
say, wow, that's kind of a nice little restaurant outside. Maybe I'll eat there. But no one just walks around there unless they really have to.
And
Yeah.
David, I'll be straight up honest. I've been here since 2017. I didn't know Crispy's was even open. I thought it was a dead restaurant.
Yeah,
oh,
you're right.
really? Oh.
I had no idea that that was an active business. I mean,
We
this
just
is
went
new.
there last week.
I am
It's a-
finding out right now
Yeah.
that it is. a
You
real
have to
restaurant.
go. You've got to go. It's.
I can't,
fantastic.
but that's still, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I have like so many food allergies that it doesn't really matter.
Oh,
Oh, gee.
But when we were trying to think of places, like when we had candidates applying for positions in our department or our dean, you know where they took the dean candidates? To
Where?
that crazy restaurant in the driveway in front of Walmart down in Raynham,
Oh, Stone
Oh,
Forge?
Stone Forge, yeah.
Oh,
which
Stone Forge.
I imagine it's a nice restaurant, but if they're coming to be a dean at Bridgewater State
I
University,
know.
wouldn't it be nice to take them out to dinner in Bridgewater?
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
no,
what I'm
there's
talking
not a lot
about,
of choice here.
You know?
Yeah, they didn't take her to the 99, so they went down to the Stone Forge.
You know what, you make fun of it, but I like 99.
I
yeah.
used to, my dad loved their beef tips. And from an accessibility standpoint, the last 2 years of my dad's life, he was wheelchair bound. And the 99 was always so kind. They would move things
Yeah.
out of the way. They would set him up because he had to sit at the end of a table because they have so many booths. But they would
Right.
put us kind of like out of the way so he wouldn't have a lot of people bumping into him. And they were just fabulous.
Oh, that's nice. That's a nice
Yeah.
thing to hear. So I'm planning to have a meeting in June.
Mhm.
I know Lorraine, you won't be there.
Unfortunately.
And again, I'll talk to Anna in advance to make sure we're gonna have a
I
full
know.
quorum. Otherwise, we'd have to skip June for July, but I will try very hard to do that. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up? Any questions, comments, concerns before we adjourn?
No, I'm just thrilled that Gloria is going to officially join us pretty soon.
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Really.
Yep. You know, Gloria was telling me earlier that she's gonna get us all in line when she's official, so I'm looking forward to that.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time. A good meeting. I appreciate it. And I will see you all, except Lorraine, in June. And Lorraine, have a great vacation.
Thank you. Thanks. Take
David.
care, everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
one sec.
David, did you give us a date in June?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
June 27th, a Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And I
I'll be on
forgot
the
to,
plane flying back. With
oh.
my 2 grandchildren.
and I forgot the official motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you,
Great.
Karen. Second, I heard Lorraine.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.